The massive project the young man had poured his heart and soul into finally reached its topping out moment, yet he suddenly took the initiative to hand over all the credit to someone else, and he openly declared to the media that he had nothing to do with the project. His real aim was to make his father along with the mistress and the illegitimate son pay the price. Meanwhile, the unaware father and illegitimate son were still immersed in joyful excitement. Just as the illegitimate son pressed the topping out button to embrace his glory, the Century Tower behind them suddenly collapsed with a deafening crash. In fact, all of this was simply the consequence of their own actions. It turned out the young man was a skilled construction engineer who had been in charge of the entire project. Unexpectedly on that very day he suddenly discovered that someone had cut corners and used substandard concrete in the construction. This kind of concrete could never support a massive building. Once it was topped out it would inevitably collapse and his father would be completely ruined. Therefore, in order to help his father avoid prison, the young man immediately printed a share transfer agreement, planning to take all the responsibility upon himself and bear the blame for his father. At that very moment his father walked in with the illegitimate son. Seeing this, the young man quickly urged his father to transfer the shares to him. To his surprise, his father flew into a furious rage after hearing this, mistaking him for trying to seize the company for himself. Unexpectedly, the mistress then claimed that the project had actually been designed abroad by her son. Now that it was about to be completed, she accused the young man of trying to take all the credit. Even the old man believed the same thing. He immediately tore the share transfer agreement into pieces, then forced the young man to hand over the chairman position to the illegitimate son. At this point, the young man had no choice but to reveal that the materials had been tampered with, stating that once the building was topped out it would collapse. But his father and the mistress still thought he was making things up. The illegitimate son even insisted that a nearby project used the same materials and had no issues. Hearing this, the young man finally realized the inferior concrete had been used by the illegitimate son, so he immediately accused him of chasing profit at the expense of the company. Yet the illegitimate son shamelessly claimed that he himself was the true inventor, and that the young man was merely someone who had stolen his work and had no right to criticize. He even turned the accusation around, saying the young man was the one embezzling company funds, and that he knew nothing about saving costs for the company. Hearing all this, the young man immediately tried to explain to the old man that using inferior concrete would bring enormous losses to the company. He could not understand why his father refused to believe him, but to his shock they instantly became enraged and kicked him straight to the ground, cursing that if not for the young man's mother threatening him with money back then, the mistress would have been his rightful wife and the illegitimate son his true heir. He even praised the illegitimate son as a highly educated talent with advanced ideas, far more capable of running the company than the young man who had not even finished high school. Hearing this, the young man quickly explained that he had dropped out for the sake of the company. Back then the company lacked staff, so he had no choice but to leave school. Over the years he had personally handled every single matter in the company. Yet the old man remained unmoved after hearing everything, not only insisting that he hand over the company to the illegitimate son, but also demanding he give up his position as chief design engineer. If he refused, his father threatened to drive him out of the house. Hearing this, the young man felt completely heartbroken, realizing how he had been treated. He immediately decided he would no longer take on this ticking time bomb of a project, so he declared he was willing to hand the company over to the illegitimate son, but any issues with the project would have nothing to do with him. However, the old man still paid no attention to his words, confident that with his years of experience nothing could go wrong. He even told the illegitimate son to calmly accept the credit at the topping out ceremony 3 days later. Even the mistress firmly believed the building would never collapse. Right after that, the old man gave the young man 3 hours, ordering him to pack up and leave the company immediately. After saying this, the three of them walked away arrogantly. Soon after, the young man began packing his belongings. Unexpectedly, after successfully taking over the company, the illegitimate son immediately started setting strict new rules for the employees. When he saw someone charging their phone using company electricity during work hours, he instantly announced that employees would no longer be allowed to use company power to charge devices. Even when the employee explained it was just a temporary need while working outside, the illegitimate son still insisted on enforcing his rule. He even went so far as to charge employees for using the restroom. At that moment, the young man walked out carrying his things, immediately speaking up for the employees and criticizing the illegitimate son's excessive behavior, pointing out that his position also depended on the hard work of the staff. But the illegitimate son said the young man no longer had the right to criticize him. Then he snatched the project design drafts from the young man, claiming they belonged to him and must be left behind. He even demanded that the young man record a video in front of all the employees, so everyone would clearly know he had nothing to do with the project. Little did he know the young man had been worrying about lacking proof to clear himself, so he agreed without hesitation to record the video. Seeing how obedient he was, the illegitimate son became extremely pleased, mocking him on the spot as someone only fit to be trampled underfoot. Completely unaware that he would soon lose that smile, time quickly passed to the day of the topping out ceremony. In order to make the illegitimate son famous, the old man invited many well-known figures, and publicly announced that all the credit for the project belonged to him, thus appointing him as the chairman of the group. Seeing this, the guests were all shocked and could hardly believe it, because everyone knew it was the young man's painstaking work, and that the illegitimate son was not worthy of being chairman. Yet unexpectedly, the old man once again emphasized that the project had nothing to do with the young man. To convince everyone, the illegitimate son immediately played the video recorded by the young man on the big screen. As a result, many people began criticizing the young man, though some believed he was not that kind of person and suspected the video was fake. However, at that very moment, the young man stepped forward and openly admitted the video was real. Then, in front of numerous media outlets, he confirmed once again that he truly had nothing to do with the project, and that all the credit belonged to them. Hearing this, the illegitimate son became even more more delighted, immediately telling the mistress that the young man was nothing but a pushover. Then he told the media that the project had been personally handled by him from start to finish, and declared that once the Century Tower was completed it would become the greatest architectural miracle. The old man beside him was equally thrilled after hearing this, urging the illegitimate son to quickly press the topping out button. However, the illegitimate son never expected that the very moment he pressed the button, what followed was the catastrophic collapse of the Century Tower. Everyone present was utterly shocked by the scene before them.